الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين. أما بعد, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala tells us in His glorious book in Surah Al-Baqarah chapter 2 and verse 21. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O mankind, worship your Lord who created you and those before you, that you may become righteous. Now, acts of worship, ibadah, those acts of worship are prescribed by Allah through an order. It's an order from Allah to worship Him. Now, every act of worship that Allah has prescribed has some benefit to man. Let's take a look at the prayer. Some may consider that prayer, you make wudu in the summer, it feels refreshing. You pray, you're stretching, it's good exercise. Yeah, that there is physical benefits from it, but that's not the reason why Allah prescribed it. Allah prescribed prayer as an act of worship. It has other benefits, but it's an act of worship. And Allah says in Surah Al-Ankabut, chapter 29, part of verse 45, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ. Indeed, prayer prohibits immorality and wrongdoing. So the reason why prayer is prescribed is to prevent one from acts of immorality. Allah intended the prayer to be a self-prohibitor, because you have to keep your cleanliness between the prayers. When you stand in front of Allah, if you have committed any sin, you're not going to stand in front of Allah with any type of khushu'. In order to perform it correctly, you have to preserve your behavior between the prayers. So that's what Allah wants from prayer, not the exercise part. And if prayers do not deter somebody from immorality, then they're not doing it right. They're just going through the motion. It doesn't benefit them. So one of the many pitfalls that people fall into is they confuse rituals with acts of worship. The two sometimes get a little fuzzy for some. Rituals are social activities that people get used to, and many of them are made up and have no benefit. No benefit in your religion, in your faith. They're not an act of worship. They're just activities people got used to doing, and when you ask them, why do you do it? Because you're expected to. Ramadan is, inshallah, coming, we're welcoming another month, and when you ask some people, why do you fast? I'm expected to fast, for some. For some, they grew up in an environment where you just fast. In Ramadan, you fast. But is it an act of worship? Or is it a social activity? And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has put benefits in many of the acts of worship. Yes, fasting is very good for your health. There are numerous, you can go back, even non-Muslims now, they tell you that intermittent fasting is actually very good for your health. And that's what the sunnah is. The sunnah is you do it Mondays and Thursdays, and then three days of the month. So we know that it's benefit, but that's not why we fast. We fast as a command from Allah. In Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, in verse 183, Allah says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. O you have believed, decree upon you is fasting, as it was decreed upon those before you, that you may become righteous. So fasting is an order. It's a ibadah. It's a compliance with Allah's order. And the outcome from it is not you lose 5 pounds or you feel better. To attain taqwa. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Taqwa is the benefit or is the outcome of this act of worship. Because Allah wants us to have taqwa, and we fast to achieve that. And taqwa, it's explained as many things. It's God consciousness, is righteousness. And taqwa is in simple terms, is putting a margin of safety between yourself and between Allah's anger. You don't do things that anger Allah. You do things that please Him. You keep that margin of safety and you don't cross it. Taqwa is to measure every action and deed before you do it, before you say anything, before you do anything. Does that please Allah? Does that anger Allah? And if it angers Allah, you don't do it. If it pleases Allah, you do it. That's what taqwa is. That's your internal measure, whether you're a muttaqi or not. When you have that sense that you're always paying attention before you do anything, am I going to get in trouble or not with Allah? Forget about people. Allah is the only one who we need to pay attention to. And taqwa is where Allah finds you where He orders you. He orders you to be in the masjid, He finds you there. He orders you to be good to your family, to encourage them, to order them to pray and fast and do all that. He sees you doing that. And where He doesn't want to see you, He doesn't see you. He doesn't see you at a bar on a Friday afternoon, Friday evening. He doesn't see you, doing things that He told you not to do. That's what taqwa is. When you observe Allah's commands with vigilance, that's the outcome of fasting. By the end of Ramadan, that's the taqwa that we have to attain that would drive us for the rest of, help us the other 11 months until the next training session comes along. And one thing to pay attention for fasting. Allah says, don't eat or drink or have relations with your wife. When you look at these things, the things He told you not to do, they're lawful. Eating and drinking is lawful, but He told you not to do that. So what can be said about things that He told you not to do? If the things that are lawful are made forbidden, it is more fitting that we stay away from the things that He told us not to do. Letting the eyes roam free while fasting defeats the fast. Committing illegal acts defeats the purpose of fasting. Lying and backbiting and wasting time defeats the purpose of fasting. Hurting others defeats the purpose of fasting. So the month of Ramadan is the month of fasting and obedience to Allah Tabaraka Ta'ala. So it is the month where we reconnect with the Quran. It's the month of Quran. And reconnecting with the Quran is not just, you dust the Quran that you've maybe ignored, and maybe, inshallah, none of us are like that, but some people, dust is over the Quran from 11 months of neglect, and then comes Ramadan, they want to open it. No. Ramadan is when you renew your connection with Allah. You renew through the Quran, through His words. You read them, and inshallah we'll go through Taraweeh. You listen to it. But the more fitting things to do with the Quran in this month is to understand it and implement it. That's where the benefit of the Quran is when you actually put it into action. When your behavior starts embodying the commands in the Quran. It's a month where we increase our prayers. We do acts of worship to Allah. We do more of them in this month. We have to make that as a goal. If you used to pray X number of rakahs, we're going to pray more. Maybe you'll double, the amount of Quran that you read, that you normally read throughout the year. You do more acts of worship in this month. You spend more generously. And why wouldn't you? Because the reward is not 10 times, it's 700 and more. So there is very good incentive to spend more in this month. We lower the gaze and protect our tongue. The bad smell from the mouth of the fasting person, Allah loves that smell. And it should be an incentive for us to keep our mouth shut. If you're offended, if you're afraid that you're going to offend people with that smell, don't speak. Not speaking is great. Make tasabih with yourself, and if you have to speak only the stuff that are good, that Allah pleases Him. Repenting and stopping all sins, and it's a month of worship and being on our excellent behavior. It is not a month where you get short-tempered with your family and with your wife because the food has a little bit more salt or not enough salt, or the food wasn't ready on time, or the kids are making noise and you're just... No. The Prophet and the Sahaba were fighting, making jihad during Ramadan. We have gotten weak. During the month of Ramadan, we have to be on our best behavior. If anything that made you angry during the rest of the year, it should not be making you angry when you're fasting. You should be more forgiving. You should be more patient. Exemplary behavior is what is expected in this month. Now in Sahih al-Bukhari, there's a great hadith, and it's an authentic hadith. Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, narrating on behalf of Allah, it's a hadith Qudsi. قال الله كل عمل ابن آدم له إلا الصيام فإنه لي وأنا أجزي به. And I'm going to take it in pieces. Allah said, all the deeds of Adam's sons are for them, except fasting, which is for me, and I will give the reward for it. Ya Allah, what is the reward? He didn't say what the reward is. But if Allah did not mention what the reward is, it's great. It is going to be more than you can ever imagine. Because fasting is for Allah. When you fast for Allah. You don't fast for anyone else. Because nobody can watch you. You can go into your house and drink if you want. Nobody can catch you, but you know Allah is watching you. So when you're fasting, you know it's an act of obedience to Allah, and you're considering Allah as number one, and you're doing it for Him, not for anybody else. Not to please your parents, not to please anyone. You're doing it as an act of ibadah. And Allah appreciates that, and He will reward handsomely. When the king says, I'm going to give you a reward, what do you think that reward is going to be? Versus a normal person, it's unimaginable. So it's for Allah, and Allah will give the reward. وَالصِّيَامُ جُنَّةٌ وَإِذَا كَانَ يَوْمُ صَوْمِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَلَا يَرْفَثْ وَلَا يَصْخَبْ فَإِنْ سَابَهُ أَحَدٌ أَوْ قَاتَلَهُ فَلْيَقُلْ إِنِّي امْرُؤٌ صَائِمٌ. Fasting is a shield. It's a protection from the fire and from committing sins. If one of you is fasting, he should avoid sexual relation with his wife and quarreling with others. And if somebody should fight or quarrel with him, he should say, I am fasting. You abstain. You don't engage in that activity. Somebody, prods you to do something, you say, Inni sa'im. Allahumma inni sa'im. Because you're doing it for Allah's pleasure. You don't engage in fighting. You don't engage in quarreling. You don't engage in bad behavior. You're on your best behavior. وَالَّذِي نَفْسُ مُحَمَّدٍ بِيَدِهِ لَخَلُوفُ فَمِ الصَّائِمِ أَطْيَبُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ مِنْ رِيحِ الْمِسْكِ. By him in whose hands my soul is, the unpleasant smell coming out of the mouth of a fasting person is better in the sight of Allah than the smell of musk. للصائم فرحتان يفرحهما إذا أفطر فرح وإذا لقي ربه فرح بصومه. There are two pleasures for the fasting person. The first pleasure is at the time that you break your fast. You had a long day when we were in the summer, 16, 17 hours of fasting, it's hot, and now you sit, it's time to eat, and you're drinking that nice cold water. You feel happy. That's one of the two pleasures that Allah promised the fasting person. So that's the one. The first one is the one when he breaks the fast, and the other time when he meets his Lord. Then he will be pleased because of his fasting. When you meet Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, that's when the second and the greatest pleasure is going to be from the act that you did, and you did properly. That's why we have to focus and do this act of ibadah properly. I mean, sometimes you hear this khutbah towards the end of Ramadan or the middle of Ramadan. I wanted to give it at the beginning of Ramadan, so inshallah we have the intention to do it right. You can do the fasting of the layman, which is just hunger and thirst, or you can do it the fasting of a believer, which is fasting not just from food and water, from everything that displeases Allah, and be on your best behavior. This is what should be our goal for the next 28, 29, 30 days. We have to be on our best behavior. So Ramadan is the month that we open a new page with Allah, and we hope that our previous sins are forgiven. It is the month that we work hard to observe Allah in every aspect of our life to attain taqwa. And to give you an idea of that taqwa, how do you preserve your fast when you're fasting? You're vigilant. Oh, if I get close to this water, I don't want to put it next to my lips because I may drink a drop. You're always on guard for anything that breaks your fasting. That's how Allah wants us to be with every command that He gives us. With that same vigilance that you're protecting your fast with, Allah wants us to be that vigilant when He says do and don't. We follow them exactly and we pay attention to them. Without taqwa, fasting is only hunger and thirst. We get nothing out of it. There's no reward. We have to achieve taqwa. We have to do it for the right reasons. We have to do it for Allah's sake. We have to be proud of it. Yes, when people see us fasting, yes, we fast as an act of ibadah. Because some people will question with you, how about you just stop eating? Why do you stop drinking? That's what Allah wants from us. It's an act of worship. If Allah says, you do this, you abstain from food and water and all of the other things from sunrise to sunset, that's not the story. It's not up for debate. We don't try to make sense of it. It's an act of worship. So may Allah Ta'ala help us fast it correctly and accept it from us, and help us increase our taqwa, increase our ibadah, increase our connection with the Quran. Take it a step further from just reading it. Try to understand it. And inshallah next Friday I'll talk a little bit more about how we can do that. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لكم فاستغفروه إنه الغفور الرحيم.